Minglava. My name is Yema, and I run a digital company called Nexlabs. We're focused on providing digital solutions for businesses to drive growth. Today we have a special guest, Richard. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Richard. I've been living in Myanmar since 2012. For me, personally, I like to be introduced as a marketing and advertising and brand communication specialist here in Myanmar. First of all, I think also thanks, Yemet, haven't met you for a long time. How you been doing?
Yeah, it's been great. The business is growing, as you know, and we're just working on different projects and trying to support clients. How have you been doing?
For me, rather quite good right now. I'm in the financial services. So when I first came, I think in 2012, it was a very different environment at that time. Compared to right now, I think there's a lot of differences in terms of financial services. There are also a growth in, I think, in terms of people using card products like debit and credit cards, as well as opening up saving accounts. And like entrepreneur like yourself, I think there's also a lot of opportunity for the local SMEs right now to be able to consume, I think, some form of financial products such as loans and also trade services, trade financing as well. I think those are opening up. As you may be aware also, I think this year there'll be also a lot more foreign banks that's going to be in here in Myanmar. I think there'll be 13 banks that was given the banking license, so they are able to do retail banking. So I think the potential for financial services and for the people in Myanmar having this kind of competition is really great, and it will just open up a lot more opportunity for everybody, as well as for the economy, I think, to grow. That's a very positive sign.
Right. Before I ask you different questions, why don't we go back to when you started lending to Myanmar, right? That was in 2012? You know,
Yes.
Obviously, that isn't the Myanmar that we know today. I think within the last 6-7 years, Myanmar has grown so fast. What I'm interested in is, what made you come to Myanmar?
That's an interesting question. I think 2012, when I first, let's maybe go back. Before that, I was, actually I left, originally I'm from Malaysia. So I left Malaysia, I think in 2008, just to seek opportunity, as well as to look for a different country or culture to work. So I actually ended up going to Cambodia first. So together with my wife, so she was offered an opportunity in Cambodia, and she went to start a youth magazine targeted to university students at that time in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So when she left, what I will say that I tagged along with her. I wasn't having any job opportunity at that time, so I left my job in Malaysia and went around Phnom Penh. So I spoke to some people, what kind of opportunity there is. So that's how I ended up in Phnom Penh, working in advertising. We spent about 4 years in Phnom Penh, and kind of, I think after 4 years, we felt that we have learned enough. We have put in a lot of work being done. So we also think, where should be our next stop? And to cut the story short, we were actually offered by one of the agency at the time in Cambodia to actually explore the Myanmar market. So because I think in 2011, 2012, Myanmar was, at that time it was opening up. There was a lot of international press, regional press, and also with all this exposure, a lot of brands are very interested in the market. So the ad agencies that I was working with has a lot of inquiries coming in regarding Myanmar market specifically. It's like, what is the population? What are the people there? What do they do? We know agriculture, but in-depth insights they do not really have because it wasn't that open at that time. So I was offered the opportunity to do this kind of like a business development. And with my experience in brand marketing, so I took up the opportunity. I've never been to Myanmar at that time.
Oh,
I've
really?
never, yes.
Wow.
So 2012 was my first time. So I can still remember very clearly. From I think there wasn't direct flight from Phnom Penh to Yangon at that time, so we had to fly to Bangkok. So from Bangkok, then we flew to Yangon. I still remember very clearly. I think there was like less than 20 passengers on the flight. It's very, it's a very empty flight. So we came into Yangon airport, and there wasn't anybody. So it was very quick. We can get out. Our luggage was out, and there's also the immigration is also very easy. We cleared immediately, and then after that, we just took our luggage out. There wasn't any people in the airport, so it was quite surprising. It was very quiet. So we said, where do we now go to get the taxi? There wasn't anybody. Then we asked, so some guard actually pointed, you have to go down. So we go down to the main road, so there were taxis there. So we took the taxis and went downtown. So that was my first experience. I still remember very clearly. So that's how I transitioned, I think, from Cambodia to Myanmar for the first time. And when we were here for the first week, we felt, I think, quite welcome. The people are very nice. The food is good, so we are comfortable. So we think it's a good country for us to maybe explore a little bit more to see what we can do here and what kind of opportunities that we have. So from there, then how the story started with my journey with Myanmar from 2012 right up to now. So I've been into different industry. Currently now I'm in financial services.
Yeah. So so you've been here for almost 8 years. In contrast, you were in Phnom Penh for about 4 years, right? 8 years is almost a decade in such a long time. There must be some attraction about Myanmar that keeps you pulling back into the country. I'm curious to find out what that is.
I think first is also for me, I think it's also the sheer size of the country. So there's a lot of places to explore. And also I think Myanmar is quite unique because you have, I will call it like different culture because you have the states, you have also the division. So each state has their own, like for example, like Chin state, they have their own language, they have their own style of food. So that is very interesting. And for me, I think I'm quite curious in that sense that to learn about the ethnicities, the language, the food. So it has kept me going. It has kept us going. So it's still, I think we are still exploring. There's always things to find out. There's always new things to look at. Even in Yangon, I think there's also a lot of growth. Building that's not here for the last 3-4 years. Now they're mushrooming. There's also a lot of businesses, a lot of F&B outlets. I still remember in 2012, there isn't many choices. So now you have so much choices. You have a different type of variety of food from European, Asian, Thai, Chinese. So there's a variety of food.
Yeah, I remember that I came back around the same time. I moved back from Singapore in about 2014. I think one of the things that that was interesting to me was how this whole telecommunications kind of opened up new possibilities and new doors. When I started the business in 2013, me and my team used to work out of Shangri-La Hotel. I think that's a de facto place that everybody was at. That little cafe where
That's the place with the fastest internet.
Exactly. So you could see pretty much everybody there. Everybody was working, and from that, almost overnight, we got pretty good internet. In fact, I think internet here is probably one of the fastest in Southeast Asia now, right? And that must have created a lot of possibilities, which also meant that consumers have shifted in terms of their expectations. So in your last journey of 8 years, what sort of shifts were interesting, and as a marketeer especially, right? How had you, adapt your thinking, the way that you approach marketing to follow those trends in particular?
Yeah, for me, I think the brands that I work with and I work for, I always pride to ensure that we really understand the consumers. I think consumers are the key drivers to any products or to any brands. Without consumers, then there will be no products, there will be no brand, because they are the one actually driving it. So I think at the beginning, a lot of like emerging economies or countries, I think a lot of customers may not be exposed, so they may have, their expectation may be quite low because they are not exposed to a lot of things. So like for Myanmar, the exposure has been fast and quick. So the brands keep coming, and there's also a lot of investment in terms of creating awareness, especially for bigger brands that come into the market. So they really need first the awareness before people actually consume the product. So they need to know, okay, this product's available. And also there's also then some brands that really go beyond and push a lot of boundaries, doing a lot more experiential stuff, so people are actually able to experience the product. So I've seen that growth from very tactical, I would say. I think when I say tactical, means a lot of on-ground activities, a lot of promotions that are still valid right now, but I've seen the shift to brands are doing a lot more strategic stuff, which means they are more structured right now, not just ad hoc, but I think they understood now the consumers are getting more sophisticated. They want to build the brand. I think brand is also important because it's always a long-term relationship. You always want the customer to come on board with you, and then after they're onboarded, they are your customer. You want to keep them as long as possible. So that's how I think the trend has kind of shifted, because people really, at the beginning, they are very tactical. So people use this product, they don't like it, then they'll try other. So they have something to compare, and the expectation has also risen because of the experience that they have. So from there, then brands also will then become a little bit, in terms of their communication, needs to be a little bit more strategic, because customers already know the difference, already know who, basically the awareness is there, but what do we really stand for? Who can I really relate with? Which brand can I really, can be a fan of a consumer? So I've seen some trend shifting that, and also I think that is kind of the way forward. There's many channels right now in terms of engaging, or in terms of reaching customers, in terms of engaging them, sharing them the experience of products. Especially here, I think a lot of things goes on Facebook, because it's also the main, kind of the mainstream channel for consumption in terms of news, entertainment, lifestyles, connecting with friends. So all those through Facebook, I think, in Myanmar right now, still a very big part of consumers' lifestyle. So most brands, I think they are on Facebook. But I think also there should be something outside of Facebook that we should also not forget, because customers are real person. So Facebook offers you only a platform for what you can see, you can hear, but not really physical experiences. I think physical experiences is also something very important for brands. So that will probably be my advice, or the trend that I will see, that they will have a mix of both online, offline, as well as how customers can get a little bit more real life, realistic interaction with the brands. So that is, I think, maybe it's for me to maybe ask you about your work and your industry. I'm also quite curious. I think we've been friends for quite a few years,
A few years
actually.
now,
I
yeah.
think, I can't remember when do we really met.
Probably about 4 years ago.
2014, 2016?
Probably.
Yeah.
15, I think, is
15 and
about the right.
16.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would also like to learn from you and understand your challenges of starting a business at a very young age, and maybe you can also tell us what are the idea behind starting Nexlabs, and also the early years. What are the struggle that you have?
Yeah, so that brings us back to, I think, 2011 almost, because the company officially, we started it around 2013, but the founding team, me and 3 other partners, we've been working together for since 2011 actually. So at the time, I was doing contract work in Singapore while I was studying. So basically, building brands, building websites, working on apps, games, etc. And the team behind that was eventually became my partners in the company. And the interesting thing is, the 4 of us were never really, we didn't come out of a business school. Let's put it that way. I started programming at 12. My partners probably did the same as well. They're all computer programmers and technologists, right? And the reason why we started this company, number one, of course, because Myanmar opened up. And we felt that, with this trend in telecommunications, liberalization of telecommunications, there is going to be, the hypothesis was that there was going to be some shifts in terms of internet access, digital literacy, people getting smartphones, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to tap on that opportunity. That's number one. But number 2 also is because, we've been getting inspired a lot by stories coming out of Singapore, stories coming out of Silicon Valley, where young stars have started building companies, really big companies, right? So the main reasons were those 2, and when we started, we realized actually, well, none of us are actually business people, because when we were working together, it was quite simple, right? We were working on projects, it was more ad hoc, let's put it that way. But when things became more like a company, there were a lot more things that we didn't know we had to handle. So the best example that I can give is around like finances, accounting, managing human resources, etc. So when we started, all of us were just pushing on the idea that if we hire really smart people, and if we hire like really good programmers, we could create something cool. Yeah. But that was pretty far from the reality. When we started, we started with 4. In about 6 months, we grew to about, I think, 12. And in about a year and a half, we grew to about 20. And that's where we realized, some of us have to start learning about business, because it's not just a technology that keeps a business running. As a technologist, we always have this perspective of, if we buy a software, if we use a software, that's going to solve all of our problems, right? So we didn't have an accounting from day one. So we thought, well, if we buy an accounting software, a cloud accounting software, that's going to automate processes, et cetera, et cetera. but we didn't realize actually there's always going to be a need for someone to enter the right data so that the software can actually give us the right data back, right? So we didn't understand that. So we never had an accounting system or whatsoever in the first 2 years. So what happened was one day, one of our shareholders, our investors, flew down to Myanmar, and he started asking, well, how's the business? And we're talking about the cool stuff that we're doing, the projects that we were handling, the apps that we're building, etc. And then he's asked the second time, well, what about the actual business, which is your P&L, your balance sheet, etc. And that's where it hit me. We never had any of those things. So for the next 3 months, I had to figure out, basically how do we solve this problem? Because to be honest, back in my university days, I actually didn't pass my accounting module. So accounting was the worst thing that the worst thing that I ever had to do. So I had to find people that can support me on actually doing this accounting. Luckily, we managed to find the person, and she's still with us today. She's great. And the first thing that she did when she joined the company was to lock all 4 of us down into a room for a month so that we could actually solve this problem. Because we're creative people, technologist people, we're all about coming up with new ideas, etc. But she was like, nope, you got to do this because otherwise your company is gonna go out of business very soon. So that was my key challenge. Basically, I think it's about not knowing what needs to be done because we're all first-time entrepreneurs, and this is actually my first job. So my biggest personal challenge is learning things as we go, failing, learning things as we go, and figuring out stuff to do as we move along while trying to grow the company. At the same time, we're also trying to learn new things, to pick up new skills. That have been our biggest challenge. And to be honest, I think that's part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
We're still doing that today. I mean, there are so many things that we don't know. Even after being in business for about 7 years, there are still a lot of things that we don't know. But I think it's part of our job to kind of learn things, relearn, unlearn, relearn again about new challenges and etc. The second challenge that we face primarily is around people. Personally, like going back to our personalities, we're programmers as well. So we don't like to interact with human beings. Let's put it that way, right? So. Like managing a team, managing people's expectations, motivating them, coaching them, which also is something that I want to ask you later on, has been a challenge because in our head we're always thinking 1 and 0. It's always binary, yes or no, but in reality with
there's a lot of gray.
There's a lot of
gray
in between decimals and etc. And that's still something that we're learning along the way. So even after being business in 7 years, these challenges still continue to exist. I think they will still continue to exist for a really long time. But what makes us motivated, what keeps us motivated is the opportunity, right? If we look at Myanmar, there's so many things that can be done, because when we look outside of Myanmar, right? There's a lot of new technologies coming up. There's a lot of new marketing trends, marketing tools, data, et cetera, that are coming up. So when we absorb those knowledge and look at Myanmar again, we see so many opportunities that we could be working together with different brands, different clients, et cetera. So that mainly keeps us motivated. That also forces us to push the boundaries a little bit more forward.
So your business you have been growing it for 7 years. Is it just out of curiosity? So when you first started, maybe right up till now, has it pivoted, or it has stayed similar to where you envisioned at the beginning, or it has kind of completely changed?
To be honest, I think that's also something that surprised us. When we started the business, what we are today is nothing like how we started. I think that can be said the same for a lot of companies. When we started, we wanted to build an e-commerce platform in Myanmar, and the hypothesis was that, well, people are going to get internet access. They're going to buy smartphones. They're going to want to have stuff delivered on their phones, et cetera. But so we started with an e-commerce platform. We spent about 1 year building that platform. We our biggest mistake then was we never asked a single potential customer about whether they wanted an e-commerce platform. We built the technology. It was super cool. It's a bunch of engineers just hacking out stuff. But eventually, when we released the product, it failed. Right? We were charging. I mean, it's not a lot of money. We were charging like 20,000 Juts for a subscription for a month, and there were no customers that would pay for that, just simply because they were not ready. The market wasn't ready for that yet. So that failed.
Maybe it's a good time for you to bring it back right now. Maybe it's
Perhaps actually we were probably just like 5 years early into the game, so it didn't work out. Engineers being engineers, hacking out stuff is part of our DNA, right? So we had to shut down the first product, and we amongst the team we talked and we came up with this new idea about building a social network. Nothing to compete with Facebook. We're not that crazy. We're crazy, but not that crazy. We wanted to build, or we created this anonymous social network. That actually worked out pretty well. In about 2 to 3 weeks, we gathered about 30,000, 40,000 customers very quickly. However, what we didn't notice was because we had no business skills, we didn't know how to make money out of that. We have a product, we have customers, and there's no way to make money out of that. So every month we were just burning through money, burning through cash. So at some point, we made a decision, right? Well, how do we monetize this product? And the way that Myanmar is at that time, digital advertising wasn't as big as it is today, so it was impossible for us to wait that long. And one of the key learnings that we also had was, you hear all these stories about companies raising a lot of money in Silicon Valley, right? But in emerging markets like Cambodia, Myanmar, it's difficult, right? It's difficult to raise money to sustain the company, to keep iterating on different ideas, new ideas, etc. So at that point, we were like, well, we got to do something that actually keeps the lights on, because at that time we were already about 30, 35 people. So we had to reboot the company. I also quite clearly remember that during the time, we had a bit of a challenge with our team, because at the end of the day, a company is a collective of people who believes in a mission or a vision, right? And at that time, all of us believed about creating new products and good products, and because of the data and our experience, we realized that's not going to work. Myanmar wasn't ready at that time. So we had to pivot into being a service provider, helping other companies to do what we like to do. And I remember during that time we had a lot of heated discussions among the team, because they were not in agreement with what we had to do to survive. So I think during the time, it was around 2015, probably half the team left, and that really pushed us to reboot the company for real, because we really had to survive. Because on one side, I have investors, shareholders that trusted us with their money, so we have that responsibility, and we have people who decided to stay in the company as well. So as founders, we were responsible for their well-being, etc. So we said, well, even though we're not super excited about being a service company, that's what we have to do. So we did it. So in 2015, we pivoted completely into being a service provider. So what we did was we started building apps, websites, which is stuff that we did many years back. So we went back to that because that's something that we knew how to do very well. So we did that, and it kept the lights on. It grew the team actually. We grew back to about 30 people, and then to about 45 people, and slowly clients have started trusting us, and they've started trusting us with a bigger digital scope. So from just building apps, building websites, we eventually expanded into providing online marketing services. We started expanding into providing social media management services, digital advertising, etc., etc. And since then, the company has been growing. So from that moment onwards to now, we've grown to about 100 people as of today. And we're basically doing both technology and marketing. The way I think for us, we don't really see like a clear difference between tech and marketing, because with the advancement of technology, the lines between pure technology and marketing is getting blurrier and blurrier. So because of the way that we think, the hacker mindset, it helps us to look at marketing from a different perspective.
So that will be kind of your journey, or the company's journey for the near future as well.
Yep.
Similar.
Yep, exactly. We truly believe in using the power of technology to communicate, to engage with consumers, using the power of technology to make businesses more efficient, right? Processes more automated, and we really just truly believe in that mindset of putting technology at the heart of whatever that we do.
Very interesting, I think, what you guys are doing. Also, I think you're probably one of the quite niche, I think, companies here in Myanmar that does provide this kind of solutions. I think not many currently in the country that do such a kind of a vast scope, from web development, right, app creation, right up to social media and digital advertising. I think that's quite a huge or vast kind of coverage that you guys are doing. It's great to see that.
I mean, if we look at it from the from the inside, the way that we look at it is that, going back to what you talked about, consumers or brands getting more strategic about how they engage, right? We've seen similar trends in both of the industries. When we back in 2015, it was just about building an app for the sake of building it. It never really had a strategy backing it. But what we're seeing now is brands, companies, corporates have started to look this as a pure strategy. So instead of just doing things on a more ad hoc level, it's essentially looking at the next 5 years, where the company is going, what the vision is, and figuring out the tools and the technology stack and the marketing strategies needed to support that vision.
Yeah, that's similar. I think for me, looking at that, it's also opportunity, but also a lot of challenges. I think in terms of technology and in terms of platforms and in terms of behavioral in consumers, I think Myanmar here has a very young market. I think, if I'm not wrong, I think more than 65% is below 35 years old. So huge potential for growth. But when given such a big, huge young generation, I think the behavior of them will also change quite dramatically, because I think also at that age, when you're in 20, when you're in 30, when you're in 40, you can put it that way. When you're in 20-year-old, you just maybe graduate from high school into college or in a university. There's nothing to worry about, everything is fun. Then you go into the 30 phase, where you are married, you have kids, likely you may have some mortgage or loan to service. And when you are 40, you are probably looking at your career at that time. So that's also a lot of moments, or a lot of experiences that the brand needs to understand and to bring, I think, to those kind of segments and age group. And also at the same time, that's kind of my own not really say prediction, but forecast. At the same time, there's also a lot of digital technologies that will come along in the next few years. In terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of AR, and possibly things that we have not seen today, or it's not being commercialized today, will probably be in the next few years, which I don't know what they are, but those things will change, and again will change the consumption of these people in the 20s, 30s and 40s. So brands also needs to figure out, I think, how we can manage. We have a strategic plan, but the strategic plan also may keep changing over years because of the environment, and also because of new technology and the behavioral. People are also adapting to things, so it's quite uncertain.
I think the interesting insight is, as you've said, 60-65% of the population is below 30-35, right? But the interesting thing is a lot of them are more digitally savvy and more, we would like to call them digital natives. They grow up with the smartphones, right? And I think the rate of change in terms of consumer sophistication, I think there's some correlation between that and being digital natives because you have access to the internet, you have access to content, you have access to education online, right? You have so many there's a lot of factors influencing these consumers that I think the rate of change is getting faster and faster and faster. I think as Myanmar digital literacy continues to grow and with more consumers getting access to smartphones, internet, etc., I think that rate of change will only grow faster. Right? And I think as you've said, especially with brands and companies, they really have to be more agile in planning. And as you've highlighted, it's not just about setting a strategy, but also looking back and reflecting and adapting the strategy to fit into the context of today's world.
Yeah, I think I always my way of looking at things is always not so much on the tech side. I think tech is important, but personally for me, I think consumers are the most important.
Yeah.
What they consume, what kind of tech products, or what kind of platforms they are on, because platform keeps changing.
Yeah.
And consumers, how do they adapt to those kind of platforms? Maybe there will be new platforms that will come out.
Yeah, like
new
TikTok,
social
for
media,
example.
yeah, for example. There's so many of those. So it's always good to look at the consumers. What do they consume? How do they consume? Then we can work back. Which platform they are on, what is their behavioral, are there, and with technology, how can we usually we will say expedite or go to market much quicker, much faster to reach the consumers that we really want to hit.
Right.